when we're running a business or doing any sort of project. Of course, a project cannot stand on its own. It needs our body, our care, our heart to help the business run. Hi, welcome back. Sarah here. This one is going to be a doozy, so I hope you'll stay with me throughout the whole thing. We're back with another installment of Top Tarot Trumps times Tarot Memoirs, a combination hashtag/video series where I combine Top Tarot Trumps, the tag by Musings by Mascha, and Tarot Memoirs, the tag by Papez. I'm going to share 3 examples of Empress energy, how I relate to and understand and connect with Empress energy in my own life, and also 5 of my favorite Empress cards across all my tarot decks. This is my second time filming this video. After my first attempt, I just didn't feel like I quite got the essence of Empress energy. I needed some more time for the ideas, for the thoughts to incubate in my mind, and I feel so much better about this attempt in filming this video than I did the last time. I also have some more thoughts and revelations on what made me not feel connected to the Empress before. This is going to be a long one with a lot more meat, a lot more bulk, so I hope that you'll stay with me through the end. Let's get to it. So first, I want to share a video that has helped me understand the Empress better, particularly some arguments on why the pregnant Empress is a very valid representation of the Empress archetype, the Empress energy. When I had filmed the initial take of this video, I had not watched any other Empress videos because I wanted to form my own opinions and share my own ideas. But after that initial video felt very off and just not very real in what I wanted to say, I watched Amy at Strength Reverse's video on her opinions and ideas of the Empress, and she makes a case for the pregnant Empress. I'll share the video in the description. I think it's highly worth a watch. It helps me understand better the Empress archetype, the Empress energy, as it relates to motherhood and also going beyond motherhood. One thing that she said really stood out to me and gave me such an epiphany about Empress energy. What Amy said was something like, giving birth changes a person, physically and emotionally. It made me realize and reconsider the ways that I was downplaying and not really thinking much about the birth process. I honestly did not know or realize that giving birth, being pregnant, really does change your body in that way. She's right. We can see that people's bodies are changed because they give birth. The stomachs look different. The internal organs have shifted around. Your body chemistry changes because you've been feeding another being inside you for 9 months. So it makes me realize that the analogy of creation and giving birth, like in the Empress, when we apply that to other forms of creation, it's a different creation energy than the magician. The magician energy to me might just be like creating art on a page, whereas the Empress energy might be more like doing a project long term and all of the bits and pieces that that project requires, doing all the different care tasks, the troubleshooting, the adjustment. And at the end of it, after you've gone through the whole process of getting that project to completion, it really does change you as a person. And that's an example that I will go into more in the Tarot Memoirs section. In this section, in relation to this epiphany change thoughts, I want to share a few reasons why I didn't connect with Empress energy before. So I've got 3 points here in explaining why I used to not connect with the Empress energy. And because the Empress energy is a feminine archetype, a motherly archetype, I think that a lot of people also don't really understand what it is, and or people will just relate it only to motherly energy, which is where all my hangups kind of came from. So I'd like to share some of my hangups, and if you did not understand Empress energy before or were resistant to Empress energy or Empress ideas, I hope some of my ideas can give you some insight. So one reason why I didn't connect with Empress energy was because I didn't really connect with my own mom in the way that I felt like other people connected with their moms. So it was basically personal hangups about my own mom. The ways that my mom was a mother, in her eyes, motherhood was about cooking and cleaning and doing house care tasks, doing dutiful things like driving us back and forth from school to school. Outside of the domestic house care tasks, a big part of motherhood that I wished I had more was the emotional connection with my mother. Even though on a surface level, we did connect, we spoke the same language, we enjoyed eating Vietnamese food, emotionally and on a deeper level, I just didn't have a real connection with her. And sometimes seeing a pregnant Empress can make me resistant to the Empress energy overall, because I remember so many times my mom would say that, well, I gave birth to you, I'm your mom, you should love me, you should respect me. When I want to love my mom because we have a real emotional connection, that we've shared life experiences or really deep conversations, but not only because she birthed me, but then didn't really care for me in the ways that I needed when I was a teen or an adult. Now rethinking the Empress energy in my own ways, rethinking of motherhood in my own ways, I realize now that my own mom does not have to be my only representation or example of motherhood. My mom really is just a person with her own personality. Like, even though I wish she would have done more like motherly things, more Empress-like things, like emotionally connect with me more or be more warm and caring towards me, I understand now that this is just her personality. It wasn't like she maliciously chose to hurt me. And the sooner that I realize or remember that my mom can only do what she's capable of, I stop expecting things of her that she just cannot deliver. That's how I just liberate myself and her from these old expectations. So even though I don't think of my mom as the ideal embodiment of Empress archetype, I can look to other people for examples of what Empress energy looks like. So I actually do follow some parenting pages right now. Consciously Lisa, Parenting Decolonized, Project Cece, I believe, which is geared more towards parenting and connecting with teens. So when I consciously look outside of my own mom for examples of Empress energy and motherhood in other ways, I can see that there are so many people, so many pages and content that are geared towards people who want to be better mothers. There are people who are consciously choosing and trying their best to be better mothers to their children than like my mom was to me. And honestly, that gives me more Empress energy. That gives me more healing energy. It's nice to know that there are people out there who are committed to breaking these cycles of bad or unhelpful parenting. Another disconnect I had with the Empress energy was because I had personal hangups about the concept of motherhood in general. When I did some deeper reflection on this topic, I realized that it's because I resented motherhood because it felt like it was expected of women. Like it was just an expectation, an obligation, not really a choice. I didn't consider myself very motherly, very like full-bodied in the way that an Empress archetype might be. And I really hated it when people would tell me, oh, you'll understand when you have kids. It made me feel very like insulted, like, why can't you explain it to me in other terms? Or why do you assume that I want to have kids? I also just did not have much exposure or relationships with people who were very motherly or who were willing moms or who wanted to have kids. And because the crowds that I tended to hang out in tended to be like child-free type crowds, or again, people who just did not seem very motherly, I honestly had a false belief that people were just obligated into becoming mothers. I didn't know or have any exposure to people who were willing mothers. But now, like in this reflection, in my conscious choice to seek out other people and other examples of like conscious motherhood, of willing motherhood, I can see that there are people who are willing mothers. And again, not just in the way that they only want to do like house care tasks or only like hold babies but not do other aspects of motherhood. Like in the witchy server that I'm in, the Sass Witches Discord server, there's a whole parenting channel that is dedicated for people who want to talk about their children or parenting. Yeah, they do complain sometimes about what it's like to parent. They do complain about their kids or just the parenting process. But I can see now that like it's the same as how we would complain about any other job. Like, yeah, with any other job, any other relationship, our friendship, any other group project we're working on, of course, there's going to be things that we don't love about the process. But that doesn't mean that you don't like your job overall or that you don't want to do this project. You still fulfill like your role in this project in carrying it to its completion. So yeah, parents and mothers might complain about the parenting process, but that doesn't mean that they were obligated to become mothers. Moms are allowed to complain and voice frustrations about the parenting process while still enjoying and wanting to be mothers overall. And also, it's just really healing for me to consciously seek out these examples of positive parenting and sit in on discussions where people are brainstorming and sharing experiences on how to do better for their kids. It just inspires me to do better for myself, for my inner child, my inner teen, and myself now, and also think about how I can express this Empress energy towards other friends and relationships and projects in my life. The third hangup I'll share about my disconnect with the Empress energy was I had personal hangups about people pleasing. The term people pleasing is pretty common now on like the therapy side of the internet. In case you haven't heard the term, people pleasing is the anxiety or the tendency of wanting to please other people, to make other people happy, but oftentimes at our own expense, oftentimes putting aside our own needs. And people pleasing, is more than just like maybe being polite or going to an event that you don't want to go to. When I first learned about my own people pleasing tendencies in my life coaching, my therapy journey, I had a really hard realization all the times or most of the times in my life that I thought I was being polite, just being nice to other people. It was actually a form of people pleasing. Not only did I want to be nice to other people, I really did not want to acknowledge my own needs, my own wants, my own dislikes, my own opinions. It would just give me so much anxiety to think about even saying, excuse me, to the waiter if the hypothetical waiter delivered me the wrong dish. And the way that people pleasing ties into my disconnect with the Empress archetype tends to be about serving other people, about helping and giving towards other people. And for a long time, because I was such a people pleaser, I ended up resenting any ideas that I should also be giving or be kind or be open towards other people. For example, answering friends' messages even if I was supposed to be unavailable and listening to them talk, even though maybe I didn't want to talk about that conversation right now. Or being forced to hide myself or hide certain parts of myself when I'm in the company of other Asian elders because I don't want them to comment badly on me or on my parents for raising me this way. I remember many years ago, I took the Enneagram test and I got the Enneagram 9, which the archetype of Enneagram 9 is the peacemaker. And I remember at the time, I was like, oh, but I realized that the peacemaker in me was only due to anxiety. I just didn't want any sort of conflict because it gave me anxiety to witness any form of disagreement. I remember taking the Enneagram tests sometime after that and getting different types. I got type 3 and or 6. One of them was the achiever, and I felt so proud of myself. Now I'm not a peacemaker anymore. I'm not as much of a people pleaser. And what's funny about this is that recently, in the past couple years, when I took the Enneagram test again, I got peacemaker again. I got type 9 again. But now with more knowledge of this Empress energy and with the knowledge of how our past baggage can influence our present, now my choice to be a peacemaker is actually that, a conscious choice. Yeah, of course I still do have anxiety about confrontation. I don't, look forward to having tough conversations. But at the same time, I also now know that it's a conscious choice. I want to be able to have tough conversations. I want to be able to make space for disagreements. Being a peacemaker is a conscious choice, just like being an Empress, choosing to be kind, choosing to make space for people. This is a conscious choice. It's not a choice that I'm making out of anxiety that I'm going to be disliked if I don't do this. It's not something I'm doing out of obligation, other people are expecting me or pressuring me to do this. So exploring all these personal hangups with my relation to other people, my relation to moms and motherhood, it has helped me understand better the ideas of the Empress and, just come up with new ideas that are not based on my resentments of whatever I resented in the past. Now, before sharing the tarot memoirs, my personal examples of Empress energy now, I want to share a snippet from Queering the Tarot. Queering the Tarot, Cassandra Snow, is a tarot book that explains all the different major and minor arcana, but in ways that specifically apply to the queer community. And I really like this book because it helps me understand the Empress and other energies beyond what typical books might say. A lot of tarot books do only say the Empress is related to motherhood, not motherhood as an analogy for giving birth and creating a project, but literally actual motherhood and our own moms. So I really appreciate the Queering the Tarot book for explaining this Empress concept besides only specifically motherhood. So here's the blurb, and I'll also paste it in a pinned comment under this video. The Empress brings so much of the heart to the queer community. The Empress Queered is gay or queer bars that are inclusive. The Empress Queered is queer open mic night where anything goes. The Empress Queered is letting friends crash on your couch because they have nowhere else to go. Buying your friend who doesn't have a job a coffee to perk them up. Handing down your old clothes to someone who's transitioning. The Empress is also art and creativity. She is, then, any space where queer art thrives or people are creating from their souls. In this concept of creativity, we break down that word and get create. This card shows up when we can have any future we want, and it's time for us to set that into motion. With these examples, these analogies of the Empress, I can see better that the concept of the Empress isn't just a single person, a single entity. We channel Empress energy when we make space for our friends. When we, for example, our friend who doesn't have a job, we buy them a coffee to perk them up. So it's kind of like Six of Pentacles energy where we're sharing our resources, sharing what we have. Now, all that said, let's go to the tarot memoirs. So here are some examples, some ideas of Empress energy, how I personally connect to it and relate to it in my life. My first example of Empress energy in my life was last year when my bridesmaids helped put together a whole bachelorette weekend for me. I got married last year, and even though there were a lot of wedding traditions that I don't really follow, one kind of tradition or typical thing that I did want to do was having a bachelorette weekend. I wanted to make sure that all my bridesmaids were okay with this. I was happy to pay any and all expenses because I was the one asking them to put together a weekend, but my bridesmaids just went above and beyond. They planned a whole surprise trip for me. They booked my tickets for me. They booked an Airbnb for us. They planned activities over that weekend that they knew I would enjoy. whole weekend just felt really, really Empress energy for me. And it really means a lot to me to go through that process. Not only the process of the weekend itself, but knowing that my friends were planning this weekend like behind my back on the side, like leading up to this event. It just felt really healing for me. The way that I had grown up, honestly, like my mom, because of the person that she is, her personality and her tendencies, she didn't really know like the things that I liked. She was not the type to know like what TV shows I liked or what activities I liked to do. She was kind of condescending or disparaging about some of my hobbies. I don't have any resentments about that. Like, she is who she is. But I mentioned this because throughout my whole life, I had always felt very reserved about accepting any sort of love. I even remember in college, I did have friends and sorority sisters that would do nice things for me, but I wasn't in a mental place where I could just accept their shows of love. I just felt so many like personal hangups and personal like disconnect with the show of love. But over the past many years of me growing as an adult and accepting more love and showing more love in my life, the fact that I felt open and trusting enough of my bridesmaids to plan a bachelorette weekend, that is just so much Empress energy for me. I felt so loved and so taken care of that whole weekend. Decorated the living room as a surprise for me and just had some fun decorations all around. It was such a beautiful moment and a whole beautiful weekend. I'm just so thankful that I got to experience this sort of love that comes from friendships and from people who really know who you are and who just want the best for you. Speaking of projects, kind of like putting together and executing a bachelorette weekend, the next Empress example I'll share is the whole event planning, project planning process overall. So one example I'll share is from planning and executing our wedding this past year. I know I've mentioned my wedding a few times, and for people who probably like don't have weddings or who don't want to get married, you're probably like, meh. But you know what? That wedding was really important to me. I realize now that planning and executing that wedding definitely was a whole Empress energy, Empress manifestation in and of itself. We were planning that wedding over at least 9 months, and it was just day after day, week after week of planning, getting vendors together, imagining what decorations we wanted to have, knowing exactly what tasks needed to be done and carrying out those tasks. But the real Empress part of that wedding planning, I guess, was the heart that goes into the wedding planning and any sort of event or project planning. It would have been one thing if we just hired an event planner from the very beginning to maybe just plan it all for us, or if we asked our parents to plan it all for us, which I'm sure many Asian parents are happy to do for their children. But the important part of wedding planning was putting my heart and my soul and my body into it. Even though I don't love the tasks of like calling vendors and researching vendors and scheduling appointments and working with a whole team of people like day in, day out, those are not things that I like always look forward to. But those are things that need to be done for the sake of the project. Those are things that I ultimately was happy to do because it meant that I was being hands-on with the wedding planning process. And going back to the earlier idea of the Empress being a pregnant woman archetype, how giving birth like changes a person, I have been changed so much because of the whole wedding planning process. I now understand better what it means to have structure for myself, to schedule like tasks I need to do into the calendar and make sure that I do them so I can cross them off that calendar day. Even though I had done group projects in school, none of them compared to doing a project over 9 months, I learned so much about event planning, what goes into like looking at all the different assets and making them work together. I learned about what it's like to book vendors. I relearned and got more experience about managing a team, and delegating tasks to a team, our bridesmaids and our groomsmen. And even our relationship was changed, because we went from not just romantic partners, but also like business partners or like group project partners, because we were doing this group project, this wedding thing together. Everything about me and my relationship was changed because we went through this whole wedding planning process, this Empress process. And in this way, I can see that the process of creating in terms of the Empress is a lot different from terms of creating as a magician. I feel like creating as a magician is more like, let's just put art on a page. Let's just junk journal. Let's just crochet something for the sake of crocheting, for the sake of making art, for the sake of creating. But Empress process, this creation period, this process is so much different. I understand now that Empress energy to me is not only like a single moment or a single day. It's felt and it's built up over like a really long period of time. And sometimes you don't realize that you're in the Empress process until you finally like finish creating. And you're like, oh my God, that wedding planning process was really a whole thing. I really gave birth to that wedding. The third tarot memoir for the Empress is related to the idea of sensory experiences, of sensuality. This example is me making a point to do physical activity that I enjoy, kind of like Ariel. In the same way that Empress energy isn't only like a single moment, it is something that I have to maintain and build up over time. Physical activity is also not something that I can just do once and then I'm done forever. I also have to continue doing this physical activity, this movement over and over again. I used to not enjoy physical activity because I don't enjoy the feeling of being tired and being worked out. But in recent years, I have been craving more physical activity because I see the value of it. And I can see that after I work out, my mind feels clearer. And I also feel better about having had time to myself to just meditate and do whatever I need outside of the house. And there are so many benefits and feelings about physical activity that we can only understand through doing it and experiencing it ourselves. I can listen to the benefits of physical activity and you can hear me talk about these things, but it might not actually connect with you because you're not experiencing it in your body. It definitely didn't connect with me until I started doing it myself. So when I started going to the gym regularly, when I started doing aerial more regularly, when I started getting up from my desk a little bit more regularly to just do like 10 minutes of movement, I can feel the benefits more. And I can feel the joy of existing in this plane of existence, in this body. So sensuality and sensory experiences don't have to just be like sitting in a bath with rose petals. We can make sensory experiences happen in any form that we want. If you don't like rose petals, what else can you sprinkle around to make the room smell good? If you don't like the feeling of being in water, like being in a bath, maybe you like being under a blanket instead, especially under a weighted blanket. Maybe laying in the grass, being connected with nature, hearing the birds and the wind outside, having our shoes off when we're outside, like that can also be Empress energy. So anything that requires like physical movement or just feeling something physical in the body, the somatic experiences that we have, that is also Empress energy to me. All right, so now going to the top tarot trumps portion where I'm going to share 5 of my favorite Empress cards across all of my tarot decks. So first I'm going to share a couple of like motherly Empresses and then share some others that are not as motherly looking. The first Empress I'll share is from the Way of the Panda Tarot. This card does look like a typical Empress where we have what looks like a mama panda bear with a crown of flowers and stars. And she's holding a baby in between their legs, and they're surrounded by just pretty flowers in this field. I typically would not have understood or connected with this Empress before, but now thinking about the group projects I've put together, the relationships I've really put in work to build up over time, I can see that reflected in this Empress card. The child, the baby in this card doesn't have to represent, an actual physical like human child or an animal child. It can represent any project that needs a little bit of help to stand up on its own. When we're running a business or doing any sort of project, of course, a project cannot stand on its own. It needs our body, our care, our heart to help the business run, to help the wedding run and be successful. I do like that there are 2 figures in this card as opposed to an Empress that might only have the one figure, the Empress figure in the card. This reminds me that sometimes it's okay to receive care from other people as well. Just as this younger child is able to or allowed to receive care from the mother panda, the parent panda, the Empress panda, it's okay for me to experience receiving care and love, being taken care of by my friends, my husband, by the world around me. The next mother-related Empress I'll share is from the Mystical Cats Tarot. In this one, we also see a mother taking care of their children. This one has 5 little babies, instead of just the one baby, which is a lot more of a handful probably. Can you imagine how uncomfortable it would be if this mom was laying on like a barren ground in the middle of like nowhere? All around her is just concrete? No, instead, this mom has a really luscious looking pillow. There are roses, there's even like a purple canopy, and there's just greenery in the background as well. So the Empress here feels very taken care of. And the takeaway that I get from this card is that for Empress type people to survive and be well, Empress type people, Empress energy also needs to be Empressed in return. This cat can be a better Empress or a better taken care of Empress because it has all of these luscious things around it, these comforting things around it. And people tend to take like mothers and giving people for granted. We tend to think that, people who like to give, they can just keep on giving and giving and giving. Kind of like the giving tree, give until you have nothing left to give. But in reality, we need to take care of our Empress people as well, just like this Empress cat is being taken care of. Our moms, our parents, the people who take care of us, the friends who take care of us, we also need to make sure that they're taken care of in return. And I'm not saying that kids need to take care of their moms. In this instance, it's not like the kittens took care of their mom by providing the mom this pillow. Someone else must have created this environment for this empress to thrive. Just like in our society, we need to have better like parent care programs like parental leave or parental resources, community centers that parents can go to, just community care type things and resources for parents and for all of our people to appreciate and enjoy more. The next Empress I'll share is from the Gaian Tarot. So the Gaian Tarot has renamed this archetype to the Gardener, and this makes so much sense and helps me understand the Empress archetype so much better. Gardening requires work. It's not just something that you like create, you plant, and then you never do anything again. It requires constant maintenance, constant work, so that the flowers, the plants can thrive. Like being a gardener is not only like la-di-da, I'm just gonna water plants and pick a flower and I'm good. It requires like actual body labor. You know, people have to get real like down in the dirt when they're planting seeds and like watering these seeds. When they're weeding too, weeding is an important part of being a gardener. You have to like really get in there and prune what needs to not be there so that the rest of your garden can grow. So same with the Empress. Even though the archetype at its core is just nurturing and giving and providing space, it doesn't mean that you're just allowing everything to grow willy-nilly, even if it's toxic. As an Empress, as a gardener, you can still weed what doesn't need to be there so that the rest of what you want to be there can grow. The next Empress I'll share is from the Spacious Tarot. This one is similar to the Way of the Panda, where it's just a lot of like greenery, a lot of lusciousness. It's a reminder for me to be more in touch with the earth. We can take the earth for granted, but we can appreciate that our planet has sustained us for this long, despite, you know, all the things that we are doing to this planet. But even so, I can still take time to be one with the earth, to lay in the grass, to frolic in the grass, to go look at nature, look at botanical gardens, to go be with animals, to just go and appreciate like the life that we have, the bodily experiences that we have. Seeing this field and actually being in a field and experiencing the textures, the smells, the sights of the grass, the flowers, the plants, they're very different experiences. And the last Empress I'll share is from the Revelations Tarot. This one is interesting. It definitely looks a little bit creepy because of this art style, but I actually really appreciate and understand this Empress here, upright as well as reversed. Backstory about this card for me. I recently have been reading the Percy Jackson and the Olympians books, and I also recently read the Percy Jackson's Greek Gods, where basically Rick Riordan, the author, is retelling these old Greek myths about the gods in the like kind of kid-friendly way. One chapter, one section really stood out to me. It was a chapter about Demeter, the mother of Persephone, the goddess of, wheat and abundance, and I guess the grass, the nature and stuff. The section that really stood out to me was when Demeter found out that her daughter was taken. She went to Zeus and she was like, give me back my daughter. And Zeus was like, nah. And Demeter was like, okay, then I'm going to curse all the mortals. The crops are not going to grow. Y'all are going to die. Y'all are not going to experience abundance with food. It made me realize how important wheat and food was for human sustainability. Even though wheat is not very glamorous, it is absolutely needed for human sustainability. And even though the Empress archetype, the Empress energy, doesn't seem that glamorous, it absolutely is needed for human sustainability. It is so needed for us to survive. The Revelations Tarot does have an upright and reversed image. So in this card, if we look at the upright image, we can see, there is sun, there is wheat, there is grass, there's trees. It just looks like a very luscious world. But when we look at it in reverse, we can see that there is like nothing in this card. This figure looks cold and miserable and ungiving. So it is an interesting comparison of the upright versus reverse Empress. Whew, so that is the Empress. Those are my thoughts on the Empress Tarot Memoirs and 5 of my favorite Empress cards. I feel so much better about this take than I did the last time. My process in putting together this video was kind of like the Empress process. I just needed a little bit more time for the ideas to bake until they could come to fruition in this video. Again, shout out to Amy of Strength Reversed for her video about the Empress. Again, please check that out. The link is in the description. Shout out to Queering the Tarot by Cassandra Snow for also sharing some different ideas about the Empress. And of course, shout out to Musings by Mascha and Lisa Papez for the original video ideas, top tarot trumps, and the tarot memoirs. So that is it. If you take anything away from this video, I hope that it is the desire or the obligation a little bit to show a little bit more care for the people around you, Not just the friends that you know and love, not just the family that you know, but even strangers, donate to a new cause, donate to a cause that is important to you. Give in some way to someone who could use the care, whether it's other people or yourself. All right, well, that is all I got for today. Thanks for watching. Bye.